To provide some context, I am a 25-year-old female who has been working in transportation at my city's hospital for the past few years. It can be a relaxing and occasionally demanding profession, but the longer you work there, the more you'll enjoy it. I worked the night shift, therefore the department I worked for was rarely packed. I enjoy working the late shifts because they are generally slower and more relaxed. Most evenings, patients would come in with minor complaints such as physical pain or respiratory problems. If we receive patients with serious injuries, such as a broken limb or internal bleeding, we would have to transport them to urgent care or the ER. Indeed, some can make it into the city, necessitating the use of an emergency STARS helicopter on occasion. In my entire time working at the hospital, I've witnessed some really intense stuff, ranging from patients having difficulties breathing to people going into comas. This one night, however, I saw something I'll never forget. It was a dull night as usual, and I was conversing with my aide about a patient's file when someone walked in through the front doors. My aide had departed to check on a patient, so I was the only one at the front desk. There was a man dressed in a black shirt and gym shorts, which made little sense given that it was January and the outdoor temperature was chilly. He appeared to be middle-aged, possibly in his mid-30s, but he looked terrible, practically homeless. He had scruffy hair, a tattered clothing, and smelled like pot. His eyes were angry, his face pallid, and he appeared to have no idea what he was doing. The hospital was in a bad part of town, so you'd get creepy visitors every now and then. People like this are usually high on something and complain of chronic dizziness or fibromyalgia as a side effect of the drugs. He murmured to me that he had a very bad headache and couldn't control it. I could smell the alcohol on his breath, and as much as I wanted to push him out, our policy stated that we must care for everybody who comes in, regardless of their condition. Needless to say, I instructed him to sit in one of the chairs in the waiting area, which is just in front of the emergency room. As he turned to walk into the waiting area, I noticed something protruding out of his back pocket, and it only took a few seconds to know what it was. A knife. I didn't want to appear to be paying attention, and the single security guard on duty was on break. The individual then began making weird noises, fidgeting and muttering to himself. I had my eyes fixed to him and was hoping one of my co-workers would come out and call the cops because I couldn't page anyone. Even if I tried, I couldn't fight this guy because he was so huge and tall. Fortunately, the aide I was working with came out, and I texted him the entire incident. With a stunned expression, he steps outside and dials 911. Thankfully, they arrive within 5 minutes and arrest the man. The man attempted to resist, but he was absolutely exhausted. This is the bit that still worries me out. He apparently stabbed someone in the pelvis at a gas station an hour before he arrived. Police told us that this man had previously been arrested for sexual assault and battery. He was accused and sentenced to 15 years in prison, which I believe was sufficient punishment for the crime. I still work at the same hospital, and nothing has changed since. I was about 19 years old when this happened. I am a tall male, about 6'1", and I was living with my folks at the time. For context, I live in a rather congested area of my nation, and fortunately for me, I reside on the more opulent side of town in a rather spacious house. However, because of where I live, burglaries and house invasions are not uncommon, and I knew it would happen to me eventually. But that didn't make it any less terrifying. My parents wanted a romantic weekend away because their careers had kept them very busy and anxious. I readily agreed, because I wanted to have the house to myself so I could play games till my eyes went square. They gave me roughly €50 for food and necessities and hurried away to the waiting taxi. The rest of the afternoon went very swiftly, and a few hours had passed. I'm on my computer with a few of my friends. I looked over at my bedside table, where my ancient alarm clock read 1 a.m. I carefully rubbed my eyes and concluded I was too weary to keep playing my games. I told my friends I was leaving and hit the power button, waiting for the last sound of the churning fan to fade away. I went downstairs to grab a glass of water. But then, as I was clutching the glass, I heard a slow, inconsistent tapping outside my window. This certainly confused me because it happened so quickly. However, the area where I reside is well known for foxes attempting to gain access to food. So I checked the door, it was locked, and went upstairs. The tapping eventually ceased, and I breathed a deep sigh of relief because the sound was starting to bother me. I was resting in my bed, attempting to fall asleep, when I was awoken by the same scratching sounds. However, this time it was at my window. I've read enough horror stories and creepypastas to know that peering under my curtain was a horrendously bad idea. However, this bugged me, so I crept up to my curtain and cautiously pulled it back, dreading what was beyond. My stomach lifted when I was met with nothing, but as I closed them, I heard glass shattering in the kitchen. I felt afraid. I heard strong, heavy footsteps coming up the stairs. I jerked out of my frozen state and immediately closed and locked my door, just as whatever was inside my house reached the landing. I searched through my drawers for something to defend myself with. I found an old Swiss Army knife that my father gave me when I joined the Scouts years ago. This person had been kicking at my door the entire time. I grabbed the knife and jumped inside my closet. Not long later, I heard the sound of my door eventually giving way and let this person inside. I stared through the gap. I noticed a burly man standing in my room, nearly foaming at the lips with rage like I'd never seen before. His eyes were bloodshot, a deep scarlet, and he was throwing my belongings around in pursuit of me. I knew I needed to act. I decided that if this psycho came to my closet, I would stab him. He came over to my closet, and I knew what was going to happen. He opened my closet door, and I was greeted by a man with menace in his eyes. I took no chances and sank my sword into his chest, cutting through his bone and letting out a blood-curdling scream before slumping to the ground. I rushed so rapidly out of my house that I received carpet burns on the bottoms of my feet. I rushed to my neighbor's house as soon as possible, explained the situation, and then contacted the police. I stood outside my house as they took the tattered man away. Needless to say, I stayed at my neighbor's house while all of this chaos was straightened out.